everybody, it's me, Todd Novak. Welcome to the Guitar Knobs Podcast. Billy is in the background making all kinds of racket. This is part 2 of our interview with Blackstar. Hopefully you enjoyed part 1. We certainly did. It was a total blast. And now we're going to learn all about these fantastic 2 new products that they sent out to us to try out. This is the St. James line of amplifiers and the very, very cool Amped 1, which is we're going to get in it. I'll let him tell you about it. How about that? Here we go. Hey, welcome to Guitar Knobs, the guitars, gear, noise, and nonsense podcast, hosted today by these knobs.
Do you know, so there's 2 bits to this, right? So I'll be like totally open with you. People don't know who Blackstar are. So, and we don't manufacture in the UK. So we manufacture in China. So I've had experience in manufacturing loads of places, including the UK, because Marshall still got a factory in the UK. Mm-hmm. I was involved with that. So, I've done the whole thing. But for us, we really try and focus on what we're good at. And what we're good at is the design bit. That's our real passion. The sound, the branding, the design. That's what we love doing. And we could open a factory, but we couldn't do it any better than another factory down the road, right? So in terms of something that we can be truly world-class in, that's why we do the design. But then I think that people shouldn't underestimate or undervalue the fact that we invest a lot of money every month in designing guitar products. More than certainly any other UK brand. In terms of design, we probably spend significantly more than any other brand on design. So I think sometimes it's easy to knock Blackstar with they manufacture in China and they're this, that, and the other. Well, actually, the reason we do that is because we want to spend our time designing great guitar amps, and we know we can get. And again, this is heretic and it's not very magical, but we know we get amazing quality with our partners that we have in China. They're the best, some of the best in the world, and whether it's China, maybe in the future we'll manufacture in the US. Who knows? Right. As long as we get a consistently great product, we don't. Again, I wouldn't say we don't care, but it's less important to us than doing
it's less
the product
to
itself.
The audience too. I honestly, I think that the guard of wear is kind of past because people just want good stuff, and I think we all realize, especially with newer generations, that the world is so much smaller of a place than it used to be, and it's that's just the way the wind is, Yeah. All right.
So,
we've got let's talk about we've been skirting the issue here of a couple fantastic things, and we have 2 amazing products in front of us. One is one of the models in the St. James amplification line, and then the other one is the Amped 1, which like all of us were like whoa really excited about this, So let's lead with the St. James, because I think that's still familiar territory, and then we'll dig right into the Amped 1.
Cool.
So the St. James is dubbed as the world's lightest 50-watt amps. And
I can attest to that. I did lift it over my head.
Over his head.
Wow.
And I curled it, and that's saying a lot.
And within that, you've got 6
weighs less
models.
than a pint.
It does. It's very light.
A pint of what?
So you didn't come out with just, here's a lightweight amp. I mean, you have 6 models in that range, not counting the cabinets. So why the St. James?
Wow. So I suppose the obvious one, mate, is if you ask guitar players and lovers of valve amps, the one thing that is a problem for them, it's the weight. So that was, we've been doing this for a long time. And probably in the 25 years we've been doing this, since the starting of Marshall, 26 years, whatever. It's the weight. And so we talked about that a lot. And that was always in our mind. But we hadn't got round to it because there are other things to do, to be honest with you. So we finally found a window in terms of our development where we could give this some proper consideration. And to tell you the truth, it isn't easy. And if it was easy, everybody would be doing it and all that stuff that people say. So so that's what really was our driver behind doing St. James. Originally, it was about the lightweight piece, and about we kind of guessed that if we could take away the number one objection that people have to valve amps, then we could probably A, help a lot of people, and B, maybe sell some products. So that's how it started. But to be honest with you, it ended up probably quite a different thing than we thought in the end, because actually we ended up throwing the kitchen sink at it, as we say in the UK, and it's actually just probably the most advanced valve amp that we do in every way. Mm-hmm. It started off just to be lightweight, and it ended up being something far more than that.
I should say so. It is certainly far more than you can't put a period at the end of a 50 watt amp. I mean, we're going to go through some of the features that I think you're referencing here in a couple minutes. I do want to mention, I think it's worth mentioning, one of the first things that people think of is, well, a lot of the weight comes from what it's made out of. And right out of the gate, it's like, nope, this is not a particle board kind of, or what's the other?
Masonite.
Any kind of, this is plywood. It's a cabinet. Yeah. It's a real cabinet, and it's going to resonate, which is what you need a cabinet to do.
Yeah. Which one have you got, by the way?
We have the St. James, UK version, or the EL34, which is a really important. Why don't you lead into that? The sound behind the St. James.
Yeah. So, right. So I'd say we did as much, if not more, kind of benchmarking and referencing the sounds of these products than we have for a long time, actually. And so what we wanted, we wanted like the ultimate clean pedals type product, and we wanted the ultimate sort of high gain product, but we really wanted to make them simple because, we wanted it to have the broadest possible appeal in terms of the feature set. So, so that was our sort of mission. And this must have been started, how long they've been out? About a year now, maybe a bit less. But it probably started about 3 or 4 years ago, the technical research. And we do a lot of technical research. So there was sort of two streams to it. So there was the bit about making it more lightweight, and there was the bit about making it sound the best we've ever made anything sound. So so that's why we chose an EL34 version, and we chose a 6L6 version. But I can tell you, honestly, the 34, I don't know how you've got on with it. It's not exactly what you'd expect from an EL34 amp, because it's so on that one, the first channel is very much very kind of Fendery, very clean, loads of bottom, loads of top, and then the second channel is, I'd say, a cross between a Marshall thing and a Voxy thing. But all of that is wrapped up in, we benchmarked some amazing amps when we're doing this, and it's all very Blackstar the way we've done it. So the Fendery one is probably even more Fendery, and the Voxy Marshall one is even more Voxy Marshall than, it's like if you imagined, I think this is the way we often describe it. If you imagined the best 50 watt twin, try that amp, because you're going to go, wow. And if you've always thought, I wonder what a really amazing Vox Andwire would sound like with like a Plexit and all put together, but then how you'd imagine it, rather than when you turn up and you try it, you go, that doesn't quite work for me. I hope that you guys, when you played it, you found that it really worked for you, because that's the whole thing. So we have these benchmarks, but it's what we always thought they should sound like, rather than sometimes what the reality is when you hear the references.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
do you get what I mean? Because there's some sweet spots on those amps which are amazing on the originals, but a lot of the other sounds maybe are more difficult to get along with.
No, I think what you described is perfect, because that was, I think, our experience playing around with it, and fully cranked up. Boy, it's got some balls, and then you can get it, as you say, channel one, nice Fendery tones, and I did like the I'm as Todd alluded to earlier, I'm a Vox fan. Yeah, and having that extra bit of chime with an EL34, that really does sound good.
I found that it was very responsive to the fingers.
Yeah.
How you described from finger to the speaker.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. I mean, you could play quietly and get some, beautiful sounds, and then you could, hit a little harder with the pick and bite a little more with the fingers, and it would really rip, and it was just very responsive.
Yeah, they are super dynamic, and I think part of that is the simplicity of the amps. The other part is because we're using a switch mode power supply, which was the biggest technical step forward, was not using a traditional mains transformer, which brings down the weight by a lot. Mm. But it also means you can plug it into multiple voltages, which is great. But do you know there's like 3 settings of power? So there's the full power, which is the most dynamic. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, the SMPS is really fast. And then it has the sag feature, which is basically introduces basically series resistance into the mains power supply, which means that when the amp draws current, then the rails drop down. It gives you a compression effect, which is just the same as in a traditional valve amp. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of got a very, very dynamic setting, which is the full power. And then the sag, if anything, it's a little bit more saggy than your traditional, because it generates, I think, about 35 watts or something when it's in sag. But it's really, really soft feeling then, so you've got those two. And then you've got the low power setting as well. So that's something that I know we're very proud of, the way that.
The fact that you've got you're in one sort of amp vision of calling it, if you think about the St. James, you didn't call it something different, and it's got all different set of features because it has different tube sound. So it's like you got the 6L6 and the EL34. You can choose which one of those you want. Yeah. But it's all in the same vision of what that amp is supposed to be, regardless of those two choices. I thought that was pretty revolutionary. Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, and I think it was down to starting with the user case. It started with who the product was for. So the 34 was for that, as I said, for that pedal player, that clean player, and then the other one, the 6L6, started with, well, what does your typical higher gain player wants? And we wanted that to go from everywhere from kind of a traditional classic rock player right up to some sort of djent sort of, technical metal player as well. So that had to cover all those bases in a really simple and easy to use format. But I suppose the commonality between the two designs is that simplicity, isn't it? Because they're both very kind of easy to use and approach.
Now, concerning the 6L6 and the 34 version, is it possible to substitute tubes in either of those, or is that a no-no?
Well, a secret is I think you can, but we wouldn't recommend. So we have to do this thing, which sometimes people don't like us saying, but we have to recommend you don't, because legally they're quite dangerous things to work on. But if you take it to, if you take one of those amps to a service center, I believe that there's range for each of them where you could, I believe.
And they just rebias it for the different tiers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think there's some really neat sort of biasing circuit in there, which makes that easy for a technician. Okay. However, I'll just let you into a little secret. They won't sound that different when they're biased properly. Because they won't sound, what you're hearing is not just the valves. There's everything else around it.
Gotcha.
Sure.
So, and mate, so something that we do on the EL34 version is we between the two settings, so the more clean Fendery one and the looser Voxy Marshally one, we switch the power amplifier feedback off on the Voxy side. So this is a secret. This is a secret of Class A amps, which I may have mentioned before in some stuff I've talked about. But the reason, one of the main reasons that an EL84 power amplifier sounds the way it does is because those amps tend to be run without any feedback on the power amp, whereas EL34 amps tend to be run with feedback. And that makes the 34s tighter, so they're better for kind of rocky stuff. And it makes the 84s, well, it makes those Class A amps more jangly, right? But it's not because of the valve necessarily, and it's not because of the class necessarily. So this is one of the things we did right in the beginning was, is it the feedback? Is it the class? Is it the valve type? And actually, you can bias. You can change the bias a lot on an amp, and if you match up the gain, because what happens is you change the bias, it changes the gain, it changes the damping, but things like crossover distortion don't really get audible until they're very, very severe. So anyway, I'm kind of prattling on a little bit, but the secret, mate, the secret is, right, so what you've got there, this is the case in point, and maybe when you go back and listen to the amp after we've chatted.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, when you listen to those, the channel 1 and channel 2, they're both EL34, but a big part of the reason why the Voxy one sounds chimey is because we take the power amp feedback off the 34s. So it doesn't matter the 34s or 84s or 6L6s, it's the fact that power amp feedback's taken off. And that, what it does is it gives you a sort of a very resonant bottom end and a very sort of very presency top end. So it gives you kind of that very fat bottom end and that very chimey top end. And we do some extra stuff around the top end, which makes it sound even more like a sort of an AC30 or a matchless or something like that.
Nice.
But anyway, that's what it's all about. And actually, I think on the 6L6 version, I think we take the feedback off, or we change the feedback on the very highest gain one, because again, that's got a sort of an extended presency top end, and that's because we reduced the amount of feedback, I think. Although I'd have to get somebody cleverer than me to completely, because I didn't design that. I didn't design that product. Those products were designed by Paul Stevens, who's our chief engineer, he's designed many more amps than I have, and he's absolutely brilliant. So
amazing,
nice.
Yeah.
Well, so aside from how all the wonderful details you've talked about with this amp, I think that there's two very specific things that kind of bring it from valve amps as we know into valve amps how we're probably going to begin to see them more. And that is in the form of the reactive load feature and the cab rig. Let's talk about that for a little bit. And I think it's also worth mentioning at the same time there are a handful of products that we are being exposed to that if they weren't or haven't been already out there, this would be a much maybe more a tougher thing to either accept or maybe probably even just pass off because they're like, well, I don't know what that is. It's not for me. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But we have so much more exposure to IRs and cab breaks. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. So we've designed really good emulated outputs right since Series 1. So we designed the old way with analog, with analog emulators. And before that, Bruce designed the emulator on the JMP1, which was Marshall JMP1. I don't know if you remember that product.
Oh, yeah.
But it was that was kind of the industry standard solid state emulator. And we developed that again with Blackstar, and we got that to be pretty damn accurate. In fact, the way we used to design those was some Yamaha NS10s, because they were the monitors everybody had, perched on top of a 4x12, and we used to we did it technically with AB to the point where you couldn't tell the difference.
That's
and that's how Series 1 was done, and that's actually we've gone back a little bit with that in cab rig as well. So so the important part about the St. James, which we've never done before, is the fact that we have a built-in inductive load, which basically means that the power amp is driven in a very similar way as to when it's driving a speaker cabinet. And that gives you could put in inverted commas, a natural resonance and presence lift, which is the frequency response characteristics you get when you drive a loudspeaker. And we have a patent actually on part of it. So we have a patent on a few things in St. James. But one of the things is that ordinarily to have an inductive load like that would be really big and expensive. But because we have power reduction already built in, when we go to silent recording, the power amp is reduced in power, so we can have a smaller inductive load, if you get what I mean, which is quite clever. So it reduces the heat and the size of the inductive load. And then, so that gives you the thump and the presence from the power amp. And then in terms of the cabinet acoustic properties, then we have cab rig, which is our version of, it's kind of our version of IRs. So all the cab rig responses start off as IRs, and then we bring them into our own system, which allows us to tweak them and to kind of to maybe overcome some of the issues that you can have with traditional or basic IRs.
Right. And for those that maybe are not as familiar with the term IR, an IR is essentially, it's like a digital snapshot of what a cab is going to sound like.
Well, that's exactly it. So it's an impulse response. So it's a digital transformation of how an electrical system, an acoustic system responds to an impulse.
I think it's like different than modeling. I don't want people to think it's different than that.
It is different than the modeling, but as you say, I think the one of the challenges with IRs is that they are a snapshot, and that leads to some quirks. And we also found that if you want to combine IRs, that can be quite problematic in terms of phasing. So one of the advantages of the way that we do our IRs in cab rig is that you can run two cabinet models with separate microphone models, and you don't get any phasing, so they mix really well together.
That's awesome.
And also we separate out the frequency part of the IR from the time-based sort of room stuff, so you can adjust either separately in a cab rig, rather than them being embedded together, and you can't really get at either, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
So when you go in there, you can choose the IRs, but then you can change your room, and you can change the position of the mic and all that stuff, all independently.
I think one of the things, as we're just talking about that really quickly, is that I think A lot of people are now very much receptive and familiar with things like the Torpedo X, which I own one of those. We've talked about it on the show before, but one of the classic product sometimes foibles is when they say, we don't have this, but we need it because otherwise it's going to be, we're going to be not in the forward pack. So we're going to adapt something and put it in our something. But you guys developed the something within your something. Is that fair to say?
Go on, explain what you mean. What do you mean?
Well,
Sorry, mate.
So I know that, I believe Laney has, introduced the Torpedo technology into a few of their amps, right? But those are two different technologies in one technology, and you have the benefit of creating. This is an all-in-one unit from the get-go.
Man, that's a brilliant point. Yeah, it's so it's completely integrated and designed from the ground up. So the two things are voiced to work together, which I think it makes a big difference. So, and part of the reason we're able to do that is because half of our engineering team are digital engineers and half of them are analog engineers. And actually, we're trying to encourage more and more that they're multidisciplined, actually, because we love our analog guys to do some digital stuff and vice versa.
Right.
But so, Matt, I must tell you a story. So from the beginning, this is part of our digital stuff, yeah? So the reason why we're able to do that is because we've invested a lot of money in our digital side as well as on our traditional valve stuff. And our first ever digital products, which are the ID series, which are still really, really excellent in terms of probably as standalone amps, digital amps, they're probably the best standalone traditional digital amps, if you get what I mean. Mm-hmm. Combos and heads. They're fucking amazing. And we have a patent on the TVP, True Valve Power thing, which is really still state of the art, really. Nothing's past that. But anyway, when me and Bruce were in the garden shed, I think I should really mention this because it's dead important to me. When we were in the garden shed, we were designing together Series 1. So a 200 watt, all valve product. I designed a lot of the preamps in there, and Bruce designed the power amp, the power reduction, all the clever and dangerous stuff I let him do. And I just designed all the nice, easy to do preamp stuff. But anyway, so he would do that all day. And then he used to go home at night and work on a very, very rudimentary digital development system, which was very, very, very slow compared to the DSP that people use now.
Sure.
And when we launched the company, after about 6 months that Series 1 had been out in the world, he said to me, "Hey, do you want to come over to a rehearsal studio? Because I've got something to show you." And in the evenings, while we designed the analog product, he transformed it into a digital product. And he had all 6 modes of the Series 1 valve preamps completely modeled. And it was all done in what's called assembler language. So it was done in very almost machine level DSP. So this was the guy who, on one hand, was designing the ultimate 200 watt valve amp, and at night he was going home and designing exactly the same thing in DSP. So I just mentioned that because I'm not sure there's any other design engineers, or very, very few, who were that good at electronics and also agnostic to whether it was digital valve. It didn't matter to him really. It was just for different applications.
Sure.
So yeah, and that's what I'm just going off slight tangent, but when ID series came out, those original preamps were the ones that Bruce had designed on his laptop, in the evenings.
Wow.
Which was pretty fucking amazing. Really, really amazing, because they're still amazing sounding products.
Well, speaking of amazing sounding products, we're going to move on to the Amped one. Now, this immediately we were just so thrilled to get. And because we feature an awful lot of effects builders, including some were Eventide's on actually and coming up in next week, I think. And so that is a huge part of our world, obviously. But what that translates into is like our focus on what's at our feet is huge. And this was exciting. We pulled this thing out of the box, and I mean, we were gushing over it, not having heard it, because it is a handsome unit.
It's modeled after its creators, that's why.
Yes.
No, well, it's very, very white, that's sure.
Yes. Well, and by the way, if you need a handsome bald man in case you lose one on your team, you can contact me.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, well, we can always do with another handsome bald man.
Yeah. So this is a really big offering into the guitar community. We realized that the minute that we started talking about it, before we even got the product. Then we got the product, we're like, wow, this is a big one. So you've got to be excited about this. Tell us about what we can expect from this.
Yes. So this was another one that was a long time in the making, to be honest, because there's a lot of technology in there.
There sure is.
So do you know what? Sometimes it's not important to be the first to the party, but maybe to be the best at the party.
Yeah.
So there's some other products that have had a go at doing this kind of a product.
Fashionably late, I think that's what they call it.
That's what well, again. just like its creators. Certainly late, but not fashionable. But anyway, yeah. So look, this is one that we designed from the ground up, and the first thing for us, so fundamentally with this, was that kind of amp replacement portability thing is becoming more and more important. So St. James and this product are kind of two solutions for in some ways for a very similar use case.
Yes.
And the idea with this was, imagine if you design a product like this and all you needed was a soft case, and in the pocket you had one of these, and you could go anywhere and you can turn up, and if there's a cab you can go into a cab. If there isn't a cab, you go front of house with some with cab rig. Imagine how cool that would be. And no matter where you went, you'd be able to get your sound. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the original concept behind this. I remember, actually, if I'm honest with you, the idea for this came up in some ways, me and Paul, my business partner, Paul Hayhoe, who we were in, there's a Sam Ash in Penn Street Station, near Penn Street Station in New York, and we were out visiting Korg, our distributor out there, and we were talking about, imagine if you could do a product like that. And I think that's where the original idea came for that, because we were thinking about people doing gigs in inner cities like New York and getting
New
around.
York City, that's where you need it.
Yeah. So that was why, that was the whole idea. So anyway, mate, and then we started this, and I'll just very quickly, the number one thing for us was that it had to deliver the sound response and delivery of a valve amp. So we spent a long time benchmarking valve amp designs to get the volume required. So we set the target for this originally was a HT Club 40, which is our best-selling valve combo, which you probably know pretty well.
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time with a real live drum kit, a big bass amp, measuring how much power we would need to get the same feel as a really good valve combo, like a 50-watt valve combo. And so we ended up at about, this is a good 100 watts. It's more than 100 watts, actually. And which is 2.5 times the power of the valve amp, which is what our TVP patent says is the amount that you actually need. So,
right.
So there you go. Yeah, that's how we started. We started saying it's got to at least be that loud. But obviously, it's not just about being loud. It's about the way it feels, which is all that amazing sort of valve response stuff that's in there.
Yeah. Well, I think I would love to address the two things that we immediately went, ooh, on, which were, you've got your voice, and actually, just if you'll bear with me for a minute, as I kind of share this with the rest of the audience who can't see the thing in front of me, but hopefully are finding this on whatever internet they need to use. So this is a unit. It's kind of like if you had a Strymon pedal, but it was just on a wedge. And
that's right.
This is, you've got gain, you got bass, middle, treble, you got a master volume, you got a reverb, and then there are these two little switch selections here, which is really the magic of this thing. Number one is the voice. You have USA, UK, and flat. I'll let you talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
Then we have the response, and this was the thing to me. This is like, you figured out how to put the magic or the soul into something that most people would be feeling like they might be missing. And this is so huge. So this is the response dial, where you have a KT88 tube, a 6L6 tube, an EL34, a 6V6, an EL84, and then linear. You have the ability to select those even within the USA, UK, or flat. So that is a lot of different sounds that you can get in this unit.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the voice real quick, and then you can hit the responses.
Yeah, sure. So the three voices, the USA, not surprisingly, is a really, really clean, chimey US sort of clean, which we used again. Probably, I think we used the same reference amp as we used for St. James. But I think actually, do you know what?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, with this, I think what we did is these are based on the St. James preamps. So these are very similar to the St. James preamp. So I think this is very similar to channel 1 on the EL34.
Okay.
Basically.
All
right. So very, very clean with that really percussive mid that people love for pedals. Then the UK version is actually more of a sort of classic Marshall-y kind of thing. But done in the black, I should say, classic sort of Blackstar mid gain. We call it Super Crunch because that's what was on the original Series 1. So it's that sort of Super Crunch.
It's more gain. Driven sounding than the USA version.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I think the responses seem to be a little bit more pronounced in that mode. The tube responses.
Yeah, Matt, I think you're absolutely right. And the reason being, I'd say, probably is because the preamp signal is more harmonically complex, then your ear picks up on the differences more. I'm not sure they're any different. Mm-hmm. I think it's more to do with because what the impulse is effectively that's going into it. So you just hear more because there's so much more going on in the UK version.
Yeah. Well, and also we're hearing that, it's not necessarily, I'm not saying that they are more responsive, but when you hear them out of your cabinet or your headphones, they're going through another piece of equipment that's making that happen.
Yeah, for sure. And then flat. So flat is for people who want to use it for, believe it or not, for double bass and stuff like that. For acoustic instruments. Yeah, that's what that was put there for. And also, and also for if you want to use a modeler. So a big part of the use case for this product is you can put a modeler in the front of this, and you can use if you so choose, you can use the power amp modeling out of the modeler, and then basically the bass, middle, and treble just become an active EQ. So that's that's
really cool.
So if you put it in flat and put it in linear and put your modeler in the front end, then basically it turns your modeler into a 100-watt amp, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah,
for sure. So once you decide on your voice and you're like, okay, I'm going to lay on the clean side of things, or I'm going to lay on the UK side of things, that's where being able to, it's like, it's remarkable. You can sit down with your, one guitar and not change, and you have everything set at like 12, and you're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're going to get 6 very like unnoticeable enough, but not so different than that you end up having to tweak all the EQ or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just you literally get a different sort of personality out of each one of these things, which is when you start being responsive with your playing, is like, that's where I thought this thing really started to shine.
Yeah. And for every player, I think you'd find a different preference as well.
For sure.
Probably. And I don't know whether that would be around what you were playing or just your general playing style. I think for me, once I get it set up for like clean or overdrive, the response I like is probably the response I like, if I'm honest with you.
Sure.
And it depends on the cab, I suppose, as well. But so these responses were originally developed for our ID series. So they are very, very similar to the TVP patent. So the TVP patent, actually, that knob there is in the TVP patent, actually, the selection of valves.
Wow.
And so there's two things that's going on. There's the frequency response element, so which, gives you the general overall flavor. And then there's the dynamic response as well.
Right.
So to be honest with you, so all those models started life as technical analysis of reference valve amps, which you can imagine the valve amps they would be.
Sure.
And to be honest with you, we've as in the Blackstar way, we've kind of I wouldn't say exaggerated, because that'd be the wrong term, but the
enhanced.
the bit enhanced, the bit that you really, it's that thing again. It's like, well, what do people think an EL34 amp sounds like? And we have done this. AB has been AB'd a million times with an EL84 reference, but it's sometimes switching between, say, a 6v6 and an EL84, say, which would both be probably feedback off designs. You might not hear, as I said earlier on, you might not hear the difference between just the valves. So we've kind of enhanced the difference, if you get what I mean. So we know what the technical differences are, but we've made it that little bit more just to make it more usable.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
And I think people often classify themselves as like, oh, I'm an EL34 guy. I'm an EL85 guy. I'm a 6. It's like there's a thing that what did I say?
You said EL85.
Did I say EL85?
Mate,
84, 85, whatever it takes.
You know what I mean? I'm not so good. I'm not.
We have enhanced it, haven't we?
It's one better now.
That's why I have Tony here.
Love it.
Yeah.
So, when I was playing that, I could get an AC/DC sound out of it. I could get a clean country picking sound. I could get just a rockin' Black Crowes sound.
Yeah.
And it didn't require any other pedals. Just that. And it was perfect.
And it didn't sound like it was modeling something, which I think is like one of the shortcomings of the predecessors.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Mate, you're so right, because we designed the whole thing as a product. We're not trying to model anything, really. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, when we voice this thing, the sort of final analysis is how it sounds. So there's all that tech in there, and we've done all that research. But the product has got to be cohesive for a musician. So, as you say, it doesn't sound like a modeling product, because at the end of the day, it's just tech. It's just tech that we're using to make a great sounding product, and that's all we're bothered about. And it just, the whole aim is that we speak to you guys and you go, that sounded really good. Well, yeah, that's the job.
That's the point.
We don't give a shit whether it sounds exactly like one of those or exactly one of those. We just want you to enjoy it and for it to be really, really useful.
I think another aspect of why you don't want it to sound exactly like anything is that then it takes us out of the mix. And I think that's been a huge problem with modeling in the past.
Yeah.
I don't get to be part of that sound that I'm creating. And this does it. This is a little sound factory in front of us.
Oh, brilliant.
And I also want to mention this is listed at $4.99 right now in the US. So you guys definitely want to seriously check this product out. Ian, you've shared so much with us, and I know that we could probably talk for many more hours. But I know you have to do that on a daily basis. We want to be cognizant of that. I think we've laid the foundation of the fact that these are units that can drastically help you in your quest for tone and for the right gear for you. And I can attest that these things are built like tanks. I'm really impressed with the build quality of the Amped One, especially. We do have something really quickly that we do at the end of our show every single time. And Tony, why don't you take it away?
Yes, Todd, because at this point of the show, it's a little game we play with ourselves and our guests called Would You Rather?
Would I rather?
Yeah.
Go.
So this week's Would You Rather involves two possible nightmare scenarios.
Oh, God.
You're stranded with two very unlikely guests. Scenario one is the engine just died on your yacht in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle. On board, you have none other than Paul McCartney and Yoko Ono. In the dark silence, all Paul wants to do is play show tunes, and all Yoko wants to do is screech like a cat in heat.
Okay.
Oh, good.
That's a pretty bad scenario.
Yeah, it is.
Scenario number two.
Yeah, he's right there.
right.
You have a microphone.
I've got a microphone.
I was hoping for Ringo on there.
yelling
but-
at me.
Yeah. You know, it is what it is.
Wow. That sounds pretty uncomfortable.
Okay,
What's
there's
scenario
number two. The power is out in your New York City penthouse. And your unlikely guests, Noel and Liam Gallagher from Oasis,
Really?
are also getting restless.
Yeah.
Of course, a fight breaks out and Liam smashes the acoustic over Noel's head. Now there's nothing to do. Which would you choose?
All right. So Tony, we're gonna hit you first.
Okay.
And then we're gonna check in with Billy, and then we'll check with Ian, and I'll wrap it up. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Tony, go ahead.
I'll preface with, as many people know, I'm a huge Beatles fan.
Yes.
But
I think this was aimed at a few of us.
when Paul gets into his ultra cheesy state and wants to play lovey-dovey songies things, and then of course Yoko, I think I'd have to push her over into the water. But
Yeah.
That's rough.
I think in this case, I think it would be much more entertaining to hang out with Noel and Liam and see what other fights and things can break out.
Okay.
So that's what I'm going with.
That's what you're going
I'm
with.
choosing. I'm rathering.
You're rathering the Gallaghers.
I'm Gallagher's.
All right. Billy, how about yourself?
Okay, well, I'm. You know what? I'm gonna go with Paul and Yoko because with Paul, we can talk about the best food to eat.
Remember
eat
when you
dinner.
were in the Beatles?
We won't talk about music. We'll talk about high quality,
Vegetarian
edibles.
dishes.
Yeah. And with Yoko, we're gonna talk about art because
I've
recently dove deep
Billy's
into
an
the art
artist.
world,
Okay.
and that's my track. So,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
I'm going with that.
All right, that sounds good.
Yep.
All right.
We don't have to talk about music.
Let's see. Ian, what are you doing?
I think that was pretty easy for me. I think I'd love to hang out with the Gallaghers. I think I could think of nothing I'd rather do than hang out with two horrible mancs like myself. Hopefully, it'll be the England World Cup final against Brazil.
Oh,
and we're it's like it's 0-0 and or maybe I don't know. Let's say 2-2, and it's been a good game. And we're going into the 93rd minute, third minute of stoppage time, and I tell you now, this would be funny.
That's when the power goes out.
Yeah. Oh no! Because we're going to score. Because maybe Phil Foden, who's a Man City player, maybe can centre it to Marcus Rashford, who's a United player, and he scores, and we win the World Cup. And then everybody's happy because they're City fans and I'm a United fan, and we don't have to fight. We can just get pissed.
There you go.
And it'll be
Manchester United.
No, I'd rather do that, please.
All right. Toddy.
Well, so Tony is a huge Beatles fan, and I think everybody who listens to the show knows, like, Oasis is like my all-time favorite band. And I think the first hour would probably be pretty rough, and I would probably feel really like a big turd because historically that's what are you going to expect? But then I think they'd come around to me, and we'd be able to hang on. I think they've mellowed a little bit, probably, So I would absolutely, yeah. I'm going to hang with Liam and Noel for sure. And that was a good question, you guys. That was a good one. That was a good one.
Thank you very much. Brilliant.
Is this the point in the show where I say, is this where we get your name read on the thing?
That's the thing. So at this point, I'd like to say special thanks to these executive producers. But first, what is an executive producer? An executive producer makes this show possible. How do you become one? You go over to patreon.com/The Guitar Knobs and check out a couple different levels in which you can participate, become a sponsor, a patron of this very podcast. Each level comes with a wonderful selection of thank you gifts. And as Billy alluded to earlier,
you get your name read on the thing.
Your name read on the thing. So special thanks to these executive producers. Moon Guitars, Vader and Pedals, John Halverson, Rick Calhoun, Trevor Gunberg, Elad Mizrahi, Mike D, Richard Kendall, Mark Garton, Matt Hart, James White, Justin Jones, Anthony Gemolero, Bill Gola Guitars, John Esterle, Anthony Lathrop, Stefan Lamb, Michael Senchuk, Ken Sayas, Doug Christ, Darren Gregory, Tom Brazen, Rusty Sneeden, Ralph Gottschalk, Don Kloss, Gregory Randall, Brett Hogarth, Eric Hemmer, Stuart George, Michael Furman, Andrew DeHaan, and that bloke, Andrew Bell.
Right on. Thank you so much to all of you.
Well, wait, Todd, there's more.
Oh, yeah.
Because
please,
we have to talk about our Grand Poobahs.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, our Grand Poobahs are executive producers to the ultimate top. These people get a fez to wear upon their head whilst listening and at the same time to the podcast. Mm-hmm. So special thanks to these Grand Poobahs.
Aside from a bunch of other really great sign-up gifts.
I mean, this is like...
there's a reason that they're up there.
But true.
Please go ahead.
Well, thank you for not interrupting again.
You bet.
Tommy Manas.
Interrupt.
So special thanks to these Grand Poobahs. Tommy Manasco, Ricardo Iguareda, David Kaminga, Brandon Wild Pickups, Hex Matos, Michio Murakishi, Bob Crouch, Jack Cadian, Sam Jett, Tyler Rhines, LSJ Music Company, John Williams, James Pennington, Adam Johnson, Steve Keys, Cody Foster, Science of Sound, Brian Robison, Jonathan Jerusik, Corey Nigro, Michael Van Zant, Tim Nowak, Jonathan Daly, Martin Cliff, Sean S. Eddie Serratos, David Poe, Billy Spitfire, and Congregation Gear Demos. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you all so very much. And you know what? I'm very excited because we're going into the holiday arena. I'm going to be giving away several things. We've got a bunch of shirts. We've got
Todd Claus.
We got things that we've been sitting on for a little while, and honestly, life is quite busy. But we want to make sure that we get these things out. So you'd be looking for that, and many more to come in the future. So that's another great perk of being an executive producer. When we get things, we don't put them out into the rest of the world. Just we want to make sure that the people who are solidly contributing to the show get rewarded for that. So
yes,
thank you all so very much. So last thing, we need to where would you like to direct people to go to learn more about this, Ian?
about Amped and about Blackstar.
That is correct.
Yeah, to this wonderful show that we've just done, which was amazing. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
And the obviously the Blackstar website at blackstaramps.com. You can /amped or /St. James. And there's loads and loads of information on there. And there's other bits and bobs around the internet, YouTube and stuff of, deep dive. So some brilliant deep dive interviews with Alex G, who's the sound designer who did this product. And then on St. James, Paul Stevens, the guy who designed it, really going into all the details of why we do what we do. So, check it out.
Brilliant. Tony, where can people find you?
Head over to pickguardian.com. Check out some of the things that I have available. But by and large, what I do is custom work. So shoot me an email. Let me know what you're trying to do. I'll give you some good advice and make you a pickguard you'll be proud of. Pickguardian.com.
Amazing. Wow. Check you out, Billy.
Billy Spitfire on Instagram, Billy Spitfire Unlimited, and Billy Spitfire on Facebook, as well as Mathematics from Columbus, Ohio, and the Bastard Sons of Neptune, also from Columbus, Ohio.
Perfect. You can shoot me an email, todd@theguitarknobs.com. You can DM me on Instagram @guitarknobs. And also, please go check out my band, the Valentinos, everywhere you can hear bands. Anywhere you can get the music. We've got a lot of exciting stuff coming up that we're, very excited about.
Oh, yes.
All right, we need to say a colossal thank you to Ian Robinson, who has spent so much of his, I'm sure, very short amount of available time to hang out with us and to shed so much more light than I certainly ever knew about not only these products, but Blackstar in general. And I have a much better appreciation for that. So thank you so much, Ian.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thanks for taking the time. It's really, mate, I'd say we've got 40 people working at Blackstar. We've got fans all around the world. It's just really important that people understand the amount of hard work and effort that goes into these products. They don't happen by accident. And we want to carry on doing that for as long as we can.
Excellent. Sounds good. Well, we're going to work hard to make sure that happens. Please go check them out. We couldn't say any more about it right now. Have a fantastic Guitar Week, everybody. And subscribe! Meow. Oh, goofball. What? Hang on.
Let me have a little bit of cheese. Okay.
Let me have you do business. I must have listened to that 15 times. Boy. All right, here we go.
I like it. Well done, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye. Oh, I don't know how to get out. I just find a way.
Oh, keep that one. And away we go.
Mate, could we do that again?
Well, that's it for these knobs. Please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/theguitarknobs. Visit our website at theguitarknobs.com for all of our past episodes, 4 on the Floor blog, and other good stuff. You can connect with us on social too at our Facebook page and share your gear and stories on our Facebook group. Also, be sure to check out our Instagram at Guitar Knobs. Catch you next time.